As you will know, chaps and shepherds, Game Chap and Bert here.
Yes,
indeed, fellows, and I dare say we have here some news about the Super Smash Bros. Director, Mr. Sakurai. Do we not, old chap?
we most certainly do, old chap. Yes, indeed. Of course, Mr. Sakurai is the main man involved in development and working on Smash Bros. Wii U, the new game, as well as the 3DS.
That's exactly right, old boy. Now, Mr. Sakurai, or Mr. Sakurai as we call him, Mr. Masahiro Sakurai, in fact, he is, of course, the main chap in charge of not only Smash Bros., but also other famous Nintendo properties, like Kid Icarus Uprising on 3DS, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Melee, and more, you know.
Most certainly. Now, the thing is, he's been working very hard, and as you can see, the games look absolutely great, and there's lots of excitement around the Wii U coming out towards the 3DS. Very popular. But Mr. Sakurai is taking it, quite heavily.
Really?
He most certainly is. And he has said that making things like this, these games, etc., takes its toll.
I see, old boy. Indeed, you see, in a recent column of his in a magazine in Japan, he stated that he felt the workload was starting to really notice on his life, including his private life, and also he was starting to show signs of perhaps somewhat cracking under it, you know.
Well, most certainly. So if you can make the comparison, if we dare, he's like the Notch of Minecraft, as it were.
Yes,
or
that's
the
right.
Mr. Gates nowadays.
Mr. Gates. He is, of course, the chief in charge of Smash Bros. So as regards Smash Bros., he certainly is comparable to Notch indeed in that way. He said, and I quote, developing Smash Bros. Destroys a lot of one's private life.
He most certainly did, and that's quite a statement to say publicly.
Oh, yes.
And of course, he also said that he often considers really just leaving some of the work to someone else to do, but he said there's just too much to see and handle for me.
Of course, and this is where we see the problem arising, because, you know, in Japan, of course, they're very, very committed to their workload, and there's lots of sense of a duty there involved, which is a good thing in some ways, I think. But Mr. Sakurai, if he wished, didn't even have to show up to the job at all. He could leave it all to someone else and just oversee the project. But no, he wants to make this game as good as it can possibly be, it seems.
Well, most certainly, and of course, they have quite a unique, or perhaps work ethic out there, as it were, as you say.
Yes, that's right.
And he said he works from morning to late nights, even on weekends and holidays as well, apparently. And apparently, he's hardly got any free time. He said, I don't have any time left to play other games either.
No, indeed, that's right. It seems he really is spending nearly every waking hour working on Super Smash Bros. And of course, he said beforehand on Super Smash Bros. Melee, which was of course the very big game of 2001, he said towards the end of his development cycle on that, there were times when he'd work for up to 40 hours straight and then take 4 hours off to go home and sleep.
Well, most certainly, and apparently he's getting on a bit, because he says, well, I'm not young, as it were, anymore, and he just says I can't push myself like I used to when I was younger. You see, and he says I feel that the business, due to the sheer amount of features in the games, etc., was this time round with this new game, much greater.
And much busier.
Much busier and more pressure. Now, the thing is, you see...
Yes, of course, if I just chip in there, indeed, we have to compare Super Smash Bros. 4 to Super Smash Bros. Melee. There really is no comparison. The amount of features packed into the latest Smash Bros. Games is phenomenal, with all the characters, all the stages, assist trophies, music, all the credits, all the producers, all the different facets. It really is Nintendo's biggest series, literally, in terms of the amount of content packed into each game. And you have to consider this man is also something of a perfectionist. Indeed, his games are always of very high quality, and you can really see he pours a lot of work into getting each one just right. But of course, that starts to take its toll on the individual after a while.
Most certainly, and he said he was trying to sort of balance completing his work each day around maintaining his health each day. So
oh my goodness.
Are quite big public statements for him to say. Now the question is, I mean, we're all very happy with the game, and it's all exciting and very good, but should we be saying, well, yes, it's very sad for him, or perhaps would another camp say, well, he's a bit ungrateful, isn't he? He's got a dream job, why is he complaining about it? I mean, hundreds and thousands of people would love this job.
Oh yes, and certainly you have to take the other side's thoughts there as well into account, El Chap. It's a very good point, I say. Of course, indeed, he is in a very good position there, but he's not ungrateful at all. He did later on say he believes he should be thankful that he was given such funds to be able to use the iconic characters and content that represent Japanese games with such freedom, and also, of course, have multitudes of fans around the world playing his games too. Now, interestingly, of course, although he has this freedom and this position, it seems ironically that all of the pressure and all of the expectations of the fans and the workload and all that goes into each game are actually causing him to start to perhaps sacrifice his health for the game.
Well, that's what they say, you see. Now, one of the things he said, I've passed my limit long ago.
Oh.
Well, the viewers and people that are playing the game, etc., watching it, what do you think? Do you think he's passed his limit? Because he's certainly involved in this, and the game seems to have gone down very, very well.
Indeed, I just have to add, of course, here, we do know he did have a bit of a problem with his arm. Now, I don't know whether that's healed up or not, but certainly for a time there, he was saying he couldn't even hardly use his hand. I think it was his right hand. I think it was related to carpal tunnel, perhaps, or something horrible like that. So he really was in a bit of a bad way there, and of course putting all this effort into work and development on the games at the same time with a massive amount of pressure, so perhaps the stress is starting to get to him too, oh boy.
Well, exactly, yes. I mean, he said he's not depressed, he said, and he's continuing to remain, he says, healthy and positive, out trying to, but developing Smash, he said, is beyond hard.
Well, understandable, old boy, and I think you also have to take into account for a game of such huge size and fame, they really have put it together quite quickly, old boy. I mean, the development cycle this time was not too long at all, I say.
Well, yes, indeed, that's true. The thing is, now, is it the fans? Are the fans to blame? Have they been putting too much pressure on poor old Mr. Sakurai and demanding of him this and that and the other? And has he got on his plate the challenge to come up with new ideas, players, moves,
well,
whatever,
yes,
to satisfy the fans?
I would say this is he being asked the impossible for just one man like that. I don't know, but certainly he has a team there, of course, at his disposal, but it seems because he wants to oversee each part of the project and have his own input into each section of the game, make sure everything fits his specification exactly, he can't necessarily have, 10 copies of himself doing all that work. He has to go around individually all the different desks, make sure each one's doing their job right, and apparently he doesn't want to, shall we say, delegate the responsibilities to his co-workers. He wants to make sure he has the final say in each piece of the project, I think.
Well, most certainly, yes, and just picking up on that, I mean, obviously, we don't want it, and I'm sure he doesn't want it to sound like as though all of it you can see, for example, on the screen, all these characters, moves going on stages, etc., that it's not just Mr. Sakurai. He hasn't just been sitting there doing all that on his own. As you say, he's got a big team there,
yes,
and each team's going to be doing different things, maybe one working on the characters, and one working on the stages, one working out the moves and the weapons they'll have, whatever, and so, but as you say, he's going around each desk saying, is that right, is that right, is that right, is that right, and
yes,
so he's got to encompass all those brains and thoughts into his own head and bring them out at the end with something sensible that comes together, you see.
That's right, it must be an awful lot of pressure for him. And I have to say, it seems indeed, just coming back to the thing of this, perhaps Mr. Sakurai cracking a bit, he did indeed make some rather distressing comments, didn't he, old chap?
Well, he most certainly did, yes indeed.
Yes, I have to quote him here, unfortunately, fellows. He did say, sometimes I wind up thinking about life itself. Things like, why is it again that people are born? These are dangerous words, old chap.
My goodness me, what can we say? I mean, we just want to play Smash Brothers. We don't want to be burdened with this now. We feel responsible for it.
We almost...
How can I play this character knowing that poor Mr. Sakurai is in a state like this, and to get that character looking good and I feel good about it, he feels bad?
Yes, is our...
do we care?
Is our beloved Super Smash Brothers starting to be perhaps at the expense of his life? I don't know, old boy. It's frightful, I say. But
well, most certainly.
He said the work is large enough and difficult enough that it can actually affect how you look at life, he said. Goodness me.
Well, I suppose it does. I mean, especially if you're playing the game and you keep losing all the time, it's jolly angry.
Well, I don't think he meant that, old chap.
No, I don't think he did.
No, indeed, it seems he's taking this quite seriously, and perhaps combined with, as we said earlier, the Japanese outlook on work and the sense of duty there, and perhaps honour in the workplace, etc., and so forth, it really is starting to take its toll.
Well, most certainly, as I said earlier, look at all the different stages on this game compared to the other games that they had to come up to. I mean, there's been already quite a few Smash Brothers games.
Yes.
So they've got to produce something, or had to produce something with this game that's better than all the rest.
That's the challenge, yes.
That's the challenge and burden upon them. But of course, as I said earlier, do we as the players and the fans, etc., have to be sympathetic towards them, or should we just expect it? It's their job, they're getting paid for it, there's a lot of money involved in it.
Well,
there's
indeed.
two ways to think about it.
Certainly, I think a lot of the burden here on Mr. Sakurai will be coming from Nintendo, and perhaps really he should be getting, I don't know, some more support from Nintendo. Perhaps, some managerial staff that can perhaps share the burden of the work, Perhaps he can sort of, as I said earlier, delegate some of his responsibilities, take a bit of the pressure off his shoulders, and I just have to quote him once more here. He said, I wish I had time, to think about what I want to do from here, but that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. So again, he really is stretched for time with all this responsibility.
Well, most certainly. And is Mr. Mr. Sakurai essential? All the people that are listening to this and watching and playing the game, etc. There's a style to the game, as you can see.
Oh, yes.
There's a style and a particular feel to it. Now, is Mr. Sakurai responsible for that, being the head of all these other heads, as it were? And could we do without him if he just decided to just retire or something?
I don't think so, but I have played many of Mr. Sakurai's games from Smash Brothers to Kid Icarus, and I say they all have his own signature style. I just think if you took him out of that picture, the style would disappear, old boy.
Well, yes, most certainly. It's very interesting. So I don't know what we should do. I mean, perhaps you should all send him a little teddy bear or something to cheer him up.
We'll send him nice messages and boxes of chocolates, old chap.
Or perhaps you just buy the game.
Yes, and buy the game. That's a good idea. Yes. And make sure you get all the DLC. That'll make him feel better.
Oh, yes.
Did I say DLC?
Oh, we forgot about that. Look at all the DLC, the burden of working all that out, and how much you charge for it.
That's very much questionable. We know Mewtwo's DLC, but we don't know about other DLC just yet, old chap.
Well, most certainly, yes, they've got a lot of DLC coming out.
But we think there will be, We just have a suspicion, don't we, old chap? We just think there might be.
Well, yes, and just picking up on that, yes, there probably will be with this new game.
Yes.
Not just the ones we know about, but ones coming out as the years go, or the year goes by till the next game. They're going to keep adding DLC to it. It saves them making another game.
Yes, indeed, and certainly I think Mrs. Sakurai might be grateful for that, but there you are, Fideos. The chief of Smash Brothers is in a bit of a bad way. I think he's, shall we say, his damage percentage is quite high.
Well, yes, he's quite high up there. He could be going for a knockout soon.
I hope not.
But the thing is, what do you think? Taz, what do you think? You think you should just be able, we don't care, we're just getting on with the game and having fun? Or do you think when you're playing the game, you think, oh dear, I think I better think something about poor old Mr. Sakurai, who's made this game and made me feel happy, and now he's sad?
In fact, if you take a very close look at your Smash Brothers game cartridge, you might find particles of Mr. Sakurai's blood and sweat on there, old chap.
Oh, really?
I'm sure it is, old
boy. Off now, actually.
Well, you know what I'm trying to say. Goodness me. There you are, Fideos. Blood, sweat and tears from Mr. Sakurai. What do you think? Do as I say.
It's all your fault.
It's all your fault, right?
Yes.
It's our fault too, you old
fault.
chap.
Oh, yes.
There you are. Join us again for the next exciting Nintendo news hour, guys. By George, we look forward to seeing you then. Until then.